is. Say this, say go DJ, cause that's my DJ. Say go DJ, cause that's my DJ. Say go DJ, cause that's my DJ. So go DJ, cause that's my 101.
Welcome in to another episode of the My Two Bits Gators Football Podcast. And it's not just any episode. It is, of course, the DJ Lagway episode, thus our intro music tonight. So, as always, I am one of your hosts, Ben, joined as always by our other host, Mr. Randy. Randy, how are we feeling tonight? How is Gaines Vegas?
B, good evening, my man. Doing well. Gaines Vegas is alive and well. It's palpable. There's a lot of energy going on. Lagway's throwing. We just had Grill in DeVille. A lot of great things happening, my man.
Like it. And as we know, there's been quite a few recruiting wins as well. Not going to talk about that on this pod, not in depth anyway. We will get into that probably on our next one, however. But for tonight, we are going to talk Mr. DJ Lagway, as already mentioned. Pretty excited about doing this one. If you can't tell, we're a little amped up for it. Fun to get to talk about a player like this because you don't get them all the time, to say the least. So, as always, we'll get started here with our mission, our accuracy disclaimer, our vision, and our agenda. Our mission is to provide factual analysis of all things Florida Gator football. Accuracy disclaimer is our information will be accurate to the best of our possible ability. We will cite our sources whenever we use them, and all statistical data comes from either ESPN or stats.ncaa.org, and recruiting data comes from on3.com, again, unless otherwise noted. Our vision, as always, is to have unfiltered conversation around the product on the field, as well as recruiting and overall coaching decisions. Our analysis will be based on review of film, and while we will express opinion, that opinion should always be based in some form of fact. We will also evaluate strategy and tactics and discuss our observation of player personnel decisions, as well as on-the-field execution. Continues to be a lot. All right, so moving on to our agenda for tonight. We're going to talk a few different aspects as it relates to DJ, give our thoughts around his ability as an ultimate game changer. That's point number one. We want to talk about how he's an asset to the program at Florida, number two. Number three is going to be discussing the opportunities for growth and development that he has as a player and as a passer. We'll also discuss his potential to maximize the current offense on our fourth point. And final point will be calling it from hatchling to bull gator. So in this case, we want to discuss what his progression has been from his time as a recruit all the way up until now and where it could be in the future as well. Talk to that a little bit to close things out. We will then, of course, have our wrap up, talk about the next pod, and sign off. So with that, let's get things started on the DJ Lagway Pod. And to that end, I will turn it over to Mr. Randy to talk about his ultimate game-changing ability, starting with some stats and some recaps from last year. So take it away, sir.
Let's do it, my man. Be really looking forward to this pod in a lot of different ways and trying to understand kind of what is the DJ Lagway experience, right? And as we see what he brings to this program. So a couple things for you tonight, Gator Nation. Let's look at stats last year in no particular order, but DJ went 115 for 192 passes, 59.9 completion percentage, 1,915 yards, 12 touchdowns, 9 INTs. So a couple things pop off the screen. A couple things do not pop off the screen. All right. 52.8% completion on yards past 20-plus yards. Okay. 20-plus yards.
Passes plus 20-plus yards, right? Or passes
20-plus yards.
Okay.
You got it. 733 yards on completed deep passes. So of the 1,915, 733 on those deep passes, 20-plus yards.
Wow. So hang on. Let's stop for a second there. Over a third of his yardage on passes over 20 yards.
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
So let's dive a little further. 5 touchdowns on deep passes. So out of his 12 total.
Okay? Yeah, well, we'll talk about that later, but yeah.
We will. 2 interceptions on deep ball passes out of the 9.
Yep, I remember one. Not sure I remember the other off the top of my head, but anyway, continue.
Here's another interesting stat that I found, B. I call it the ADOT, average depth of target. I know you're going to like this one.
Yes, I'm a fan of this. I'm a fan of this stat.
Yeah, 31.2 yards.
Whoa, that is monstrous.
It is. It's actually longer than what I thought it was going to be. And
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was going to be somewhere around 25. No, 31.2. Okay.
Holy cow. That's wild, man. That's wild.
Mhm. Absolutely wild. The other things that I'm going to run down for you real quick here to cap this off. Fourth highest rated deep passer, according to Pro Football Focus, led all SEC returners in deep passing metrics, and
Yeah,
topped
I
all
think he was the
quarterbacks
fourth.
in the nation.
I think he might have been the fourth highest rated passer overall. I think for deep
Overall.
passing, he was best.
And that's the thing. It said topped all quarterbacks in the national ranking on pure deep passes.
There you go. Okay.
So that's where the cat, because sometimes ESPN had it construed from PFF, that had construed from On3, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day,
we know the stat battle for sure. That's why we try to cite it as best we can.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so that's the other thing too. We go to the rushing game, and I want to say a couple things on the rushing game. We know that his legs, because of his hamstring, he was not what he was or what he should have been after the UGA game. It was what it was.
Yep.
Thank you very little, Jacksonville, Everbank, whatever you call
Field, baby. Yeah.
And that's why they're going in the garbage. But anyways, rush for 101 yards on 51 attempts. So 101 yards, 51 attempts. Yep. No big deal. Yeah, 2 yards a rush, whatever. No rush.
Well, that's because that's including sack yardage, though. So you have to keep that in mind. Those attempts and yards both factor in sacks. So we don't have a way to pull that out for the whole season.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Perfect. And then Lagway also led all FBS true freshmen with a total passer rating. So when we look at that, phenomenal stats across the board, given sharing time with Graham Cracker to start the season, given finding his stride, given a lingering hamstring injury that limited his playmaking ability. We'll talk about that later. And a limiting B, I don't mean to get you off started, but offensive scheme. And I'll stop there.
We'll get there also. So that's fine. That's fine. No animosity on that one tonight. No, really good points there. Love some of those advanced stats. That average depth of target is crazy. So just to break that down, meaning that the average attempt, basically, not the passing attempt itself, but like the average depth that he was trying to throw the ball to was 31 yards downfield as an average. That is crazy. I mean, we know he likes to throw it deep, but wow, that's phenomenal. I mean, that's absolutely phenomenal. So again, I guess it's only phenomenal if you complete them, in fairness, but he was, right? So at least for the most part. So really good call out there. I have some similar stuff on the PFF stuff later. Again, we don't review this stuff beforehand, but I've got a few other things I'm going to throw in there as well. So we'll get to that also. But I love the capability that he has here, or that he has showed. One thing that I do think we should mention as well is record, right? I know it's well documented, but I think it's still important, right? Record as a starter. I think almost anyone knows it who's read anything about him. but record as a starter is 6-1, and the 1 was Georgia, where he didn't finish. So really, as a starter, when he finishes the game, he hasn't lost yet, right? And that's not to say he won't lose, but certainly. But I think it's really important to keep that in mind. He has a winning mentality. He does not. He's not solely reliant on his own abilities or anything else. He's all about the team. And again, things we'll get into and discuss further, but I think that's really important. So speaking of ability to win, or ability to play tough, even if they didn't win, well, I want to call out some throws. So we want to talk about, we called this the ultimate game changer segment. Let's call out some specific plays as to why that is. So we talked about all three of these throws, I think, in our OMIs, certainly during the season, but we're going to recap them real quick. So I'll throw out the three that stood out to me the most, because I think they were either the most clutch, the best, just the ability they showed, whatever the case might be. So Samford is the first one. And even though that was obviously a blowout, he had, still to this day, one of the better passes I think I've ever seen, when he stepped up in the pocket and had to jump to throw the ball, like off 1 foot, jumped and threw an absolute dime to Mizell in the corner of the end zone, with the ball traveling probably 40 yards in the air, maybe even a little further than that. Honestly, it was a bomb of a pass, and it hit him right in the numbers, in stride, with a defender, frankly, basically draped all over him because they had that really fast corner at Samford this year. Remarkable, absolutely remarkable stuff. He saw Mizell get a step on him, and he stepped up in the pocket and made the read. Next one I'm going to call out, Tennessee, obviously comes in 4 Mertz after the ACL tear, has to get his bearings, has to adjust a little bit, doesn't play badly or anything, but definitely could have played, I think had the capability to play better. But then once he gets going, we come down to the final drive, down 7, time running out, 20 yards out, third and a mile. I think it was 3rd and 12 or something like that. I'm going from memory, so apologies if that's incorrect. But ultimately, he again steps up in the pocket, feels the rush closing in, steps up and delivers an absolute bullet to DK on the skinny post that he was running out there. I mean, just phenomenal play in a clutch moment, shows that he has the ability to change the game, right? Which is what we're talking about. And the last one, and I'm noticing a theme here that I didn't think about before talking about this, but is the LSU throw to Badger. So here's another one, pockets collapsing. He steps up. Seems like he makes a lot of good throws when he steps up, because all 3 of these have that kind of common theme to them. But he steps up and delivers an absolute beautiful ball in between the coverage, over the linebacker, underneath the safety. Badger had beat the corner, but it was that was not like a big window ball. Like it was not super tight, but it was, for a deep ball, it was a tight window, and he hits it perfectly. Like he was 5 yards in front of him. It's just absolutely amazing. And once again, in that situation, we were trailing. We weren't a couple plays later, but we were trailing at that point in time when he hit that pass. So just some phenomenal stuff that we've seen from him. The potential that he shows in these throws is next level, quite frankly. And to be able to feel the pocket, read the defense, and throw accurate long passes all together, it's special stuff. It's stuff that we really haven't seen in a very long time. I don't know that we've ever really seen it to his level, but you have to go back to the Spurrier days and get into Warfel or Rexy or somebody like that when we're looking at the ability to do what he's doing with actually throwing the football. So it's phenomenal stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
The interesting thing about all of that is long season. It seemed like a season ago almost. And
I think remember, it was. It was.
I remember all 3 of those passes so vividly. And if anything, the one thing I will say is we know what the original jump pass looked like. This has to be that pass against Samford down to Mizell on the right sideline.
Yeah,
that's like jump pass 2.0, because we know the OG was what it was, right? So, but 3 phenomenal plays, and that's the other thing too. When you give someone the name game changer, what does that mean? That comes with a lot of responsibility, right? With great power comes great responsibility. So he has the ability to do that. He has the ability to shift, to change, to a lot of what we talked about in past pods, putting the secondary, putting corners, putting linebackers on their heels and not their toes. He has the ability to do that and shift defenses. So great plays. And I tell you what, I remember each one, and they were phenomenal, as long as some others, but definitely great ones to highlight, B.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And yeah, there are definitely plenty to choose from, which is nice to have this plethora of options, right, to be able to go through and look at. But yeah, really good stuff. So, all right, moving on. Next topic here is, how is he an asset to the program, or talking about the fact that he is an asset to a program. Turn it over to you. What you got there?
Yeah, so I think this is where we could be subjective, right? But I wanted to give some raw insight as to what this actually means as far as an asset to the program. So a couple things. DJ is actively involved and actively engaged in recruiting efforts, right? When you look at current players and when we look at recruits. And I think the main thing that DJ saw is the time that Graham Mertz spent with him, and how important it was to break bread, how important it was to have intimate conversations. Intimate meaning one-on-ones, intimate meaning go through game prep together, meaning from Wednesday on, we're spending time together to get you locked in for the game. And I think a lot of those habits that Graham had have passed on to him. And especially when you look at what Graham said to Ricky Pearsall, if you all remember this, Ricky Pearsall came to visit the swamp, and Ricky's like, okay, yeah, cool, sure, nice place, okay, facilities, okay, the weather, sure. And Graham Mertz looked at Ricky Pearsall and said, watch this. Yep. And spun it and looked at Ricky and basically said, oh, okay. Like, and he was just like, yeah, that could be coming to you. Really? Uh-huh. Can you see yourself catching that? Oh, yeah, sure. And so DJ's picked up on a lot of that, I believe, over the years, now that he's the leader of the squad, right? And so a couple things that stuck out to me, B. Here's a direct quote after the FSU game. I'm definitely going to be involved in the transfer portal and the recruiting class. So that's huge. Love how he builds rapport with wide receiver position, sharing the vision for the offense, highlighting the opportunities, right? Here's a message from Lagway to transfer portal wide receivers. You're going to get the ball. We're going to push the ball downfield. We're going to make some big plays, and you're going to have fun doing it.
Love that. Love that.
Hello.
And I'd say we have plenty of film evidence to back that up too. That isn't just him talking, right? And
how about that?
Again, despite Napier concerns with the offense, we still have a lot of video evidence to back that up. So it's valid.
Hey B, don't tell me you love me, show me you love me. And
that's
like
right.
You said, we have film. We have film to prove it. The other thing is, when DJ looks at the current roster, and when you look at the guys who are eligible to leave for the draft, the guys who stuck around, this is key. To quote DJ again, and a lot of this is coming from articles in Gator Country, to cite that specifically. The biggest thing is keeping guys here that we have. The biggest thing is making sure everyone is locked in and that we can add on and build on the momentum that we had started at the end of the season. So Lagway has spent a lot of time on the recruiting trips to other campuses. He spent a lot of time locally with Grill in the Ville that we just had this past weekend. By the way, AR was in town for his camp. I heard some great things out of that camp that he did there. Hyped up 400 plus kids. It was phenomenal. And the other thing that I love, what Lagway referenced was, this reminded me of what Tom Brady used to do back in the days with his offensive line. He has specific dinners with his offensive line. He specifically called out Jake Slaughter, #1 center in the nation, right? When you break bread with people, you get to learn them in different ways, right? You get to understand nuance. You get to understand certain things. There's a greater connection. And DJ is doing that, not just with the skill players, the skill positions, doing it with the offensive line, doing it with guys that have been around a couple of years, but had the opportunity to leave. But he's like, hey, we're building something special. The culture is here. I need playmakers around me. I need a good support staff around me, because we can see what happened last year when Billy, I'm going to call it the war cry, B. Billy called for
the war cry.
Right?
Okay.
Billy called for players to elevate themselves and get around DJ. Get around DJ. DJ is going to help you elevate your level of play, right? Get around him, support him. And that's why we finished the season the way we finished the season. The war cry worked, the chant, right? So I think DJ's leaning into a lot of that when you look at relationships. And what did we talk about last year that Napier does very, very well, or that he's done very, very well? Culture building.
Culture.
Bingo. Just like real estate. Location.
Yes,
so
indeed.
He's a great example of that. And that is what I believe. So here's where the subjectivity comes in. And because obviously we're not involved in those conversations.
Sure.
But this is where I believe a lot of those players are going to say, you know what? Yeah, let's stay. Let's give it a good ride. I have the ability to go to the draft. I might be a low second round, a third round, whatever. Let's stay. Let's make it something special. And those other skilled positions, those players coming in the next class are going, he's going to be here for another 2 years.
Yep.
I want to get a ball thrown from him.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go, B.
No, I love it. Really good points there. Love the specifics there that you were able to find on things that he said and also things that have occurred. That's great stuff. And I think it's really important too, because we want to make sure that we're, highlighting not only his ability, but also his commitment here. And that's something that obviously in this day and age is pretty rare. But he feels so far anyway. I won't go too far and above, but he feels Damian Piercy to me. And for those that don't know, Damian Pierce is a running back that was here under I don't know if he was, I think he was probably recruited by McElwain, and then was here under Mullen. But he wanted to be a Gator. He didn't want to go anywhere. Now, he didn't really have the same option. The transfer portal wasn't quite as volatile then, but it was getting there at the end of his time. And he never even thought about going anywhere. He was here to be a Gator and wanted to be a Gator. And again, something that I understand is not going to be prevalent, right, in the at least in the current landscape of college football. But man, is it great to see it when it is, right? Is it great to see it when it is? And I think you have that in DJ. I think he really wants to be here, wants to affect change, wants to put us back on the national map from a standpoint of really good play and things of that nature. We'll see if he's able to do it, but I think his drive and his desire is there, and he's shown so far he can accomplish some pretty special things. So good stuff. All right, so let's talk about where he can continue to improve. Opportunities for growth and development. This is really important because as good as he was last year and as many great plays as he did make, and he did make a lot of them, he also had some plays that were, you could tell he was a freshman. Let's be real, right? So the number one thing we want to call out here is working his progressions appropriately and reading coverage more consistently. We have another thing we want to talk to as well, but we'll start off with this point. And I think this is really key because we definitely had some difficulties show up on film last year against drop 8 and against match coverage. So what I mean by those things are when they rush 3 and drop 8 people into coverage, right? That's the drop 8 scenario. And then the match coverage is when you're not playing what we'd call a static zone, right? So a static zone is just when you go out there and you basically do exactly what it's supposed to be in the playbook type of thing. There's no variance, right? You don't have a base coverage that you're then kind of tweaking from or modifying from. You're just basically saying, hey, I'm playing cover 2, or hey, I'm playing cover 3, and it's just that's what you're doing, right? And when he saw that, he was fantastic against it. Go watch the Kentucky game. They pretty much played static zone all night, right? So when we see that, that's where we see him excel. But when we saw some of the match coverages and some of the things that we saw against Georgia before he went out, not that he wasn't still pretty good, but no interceptions in that game, but some of the things that we saw later in the season with FSU, with Tulane, some things where he had some struggles at times. It's certainly not every time. It's certainly not anything I would call an Achilles heel, but it's certainly also something where he could improve, right? So the other thing I would point out in this, particularly with the drop 8, going back to that, is that I've seen a little concern, and this is not Achilles heel yet, but I do have concern that it could be. The thing I'm going to really keep an eye on last year is he going to spot those underneath linebackers? And I'm going to tell you why I think this happens. But when underneath linebackers are playing zone, especially in a drop 8, he tends to not see them. We've seen this on film multiple times for multiple interceptions and a few other plays that should have been interceptions. Go back and watch that LSU game. They dropped a couple that were thrown right in their breadbasket, right? So again, it's the drop 8 examples where this happens, and he tends to kind of lose a linebacker. I think I know why in terms of what he was doing. Whether or not he'll correct it, we'll see going forward. But DJ looks for the deep pass first, right? He looks deep before he looks short, which in my opinion is what you're supposed to do. But I suppose it depends on the offense and school of thought and things of that nature. But he looks for the deep ball first. When you do that, and then you're coming down, right? You're working down your progression instead of up your progression. What do you not see? The guys underneath, because you were looking past them. So I can totally see why this would happen to him. So he's got to figure out ways to get better about making sure that he's checking that without second guessing himself, right? Because he's still got to pull the trigger quick. We may have a great offensive line this year. And we really may, by the way, just seeing article after article about it. But but regardless, you still got to get the ball out, right? So at the end of the day, I think that's going to be something that I keep my closest eye on. Because again, I wouldn't call that one an Achilles heel yet, but it's the one that I would say is closest to a potential problem. So we're going to have to see how that develops. If he does throw picks to linebackers underneath, what coverage were they in? What were they doing? Were they just sitting there and spy and he didn't see them? Or was there something disguised a little differently that maybe he hadn't run into yet that he's still got to grow and learn from, right? He's only a true sophomore. There's still going to be some growing pains there. I don't think there's any question. It's a question of how much can we limit them. So those are my thoughts on that, and how he can potentially improve and move on from there.
No, you had some good things, and I want to say real quick, sidebar. I'm going to go back. The comparison I thought you were going to say was Tim Tebow-esque, but I think that was too easy. But Damian Pierce was a spot on comparison because I remember that run against FSU, and I remember him losing his helmet.
Yeah.
And just
my God.
I mean, I saw that play, and I think I wanted to run through a brick wall after seeing that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the commitment that Damian Pierce showed, and wasn't the strongest, wasn't the fastest, anyways, good comparison. I dig it. Are we gonna refer to the linebackers for DJ as the lurky linebackers? Is that the deal?
Oh boy, I hope. Let's put it this way. I hope not. But
I hope not.
Maybe we might have to. We might have to bring it out.
Yeah, it's funny. Be great points across the board. My two things were, believe it or not, I had on my notes, lurky linebackers, right? That you just don't see. And then I had to chalk it up to holding the ball a little bit too long, right?
That's a good one too. That's a good one too.
Those situations, and it's funny. I wasn't sure if it was because he was looking for the deep pass first. You just confirmed it. He's looking for the deep pass first, or whatever the case might be. But it seems like when he held on to the ball, this is going to sound really nitpicky, but when he held on to the ball for an extra 1 to 2 seconds, that's when he scrambled, and that's when the sack count went up, and that's when things got compromised, right?
Agreed.
So that was what it was. Outside of that, I think the other thing when we look at his opportunities is we did not see the complete body of work last year. And I mean that literally and figuratively. Why? Well, it was a reference, going back to our reference from earlier, the hamstring. When we look at what he was dealing with, the hamstring was what? Whether it be at 60, 70%, whatever the case might be. The other thing was, I look at it from that perspective. I also look at it from the perspective of the playbook. And remember, Graham started the season. Graham goes down against Tennessee, and then he comes in, and then B and I talked about this a lot last year. What percentage of the playbook did we see? Did we actually see? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And how much of those were actually tailored to Graham? How much of those were tailored to DJ? So on and so forth. And so we really feel like it was, again, we had to do a switch in the middle of the season. It was what it was. Then we had to fight injury. Then we had to fight a few different things, right? It was kind of a perfect storm in that sense. So to finish the season the way we finished was fantastic. But at the end of the day, I can still chalk it up to a limited body of work that we saw. This fall, we hope to see that full body of work on display.
Yeah, agreed. And just to bring up a point here, you mentioned the hamstring injury. The only game he was fully healthy in was against Kentucky. That was the only, other than Samford, which we're not going to count Samford, right?
Yeah.
But just to run down the stats there, he was 7 for 14, 259 yards, no touchdowns because every friggin' thing got tackled inside the 5. We said we were going to talk about this later, but I think this is as good a time as now.
I think
when reviewing the film for this, I swear I found 15 plays where the receiver was tackled inside the 10 that he had hit him on. If half of those get through, he's got 17 touchdowns instead of 12. And frankly, there were several others where, more than that. He'd have 20 touchdowns instead of 12, 19 or 20. And then not only that, but when we look further, there were other plays where the receiver fell down not running the route, but fell down catching the ball, where if they could have been able to stay on their feet, they could have gone there. I mean, DJ easily could have had 22 touchdowns in 6 starts. And that's no smoke and mirrors. That was not even hard. It was just freakish how often his receivers got tackled inside the 10-yard line, a lot of times inside the 5-yard line. That's why against Kentucky, if you remember, Jaden Baugh had 5 touchdowns. DJ Lagway had none, right? And the reason why is because everybody got tackled inside the 10-yard line, so it was ridiculous. But so again, 7 for 14, but 259 yards on 7 for 14. 7 completions, 259 yards. That's an average of 18.5 per attempt. It was even higher than that per completion. We called that out in our pod when we went over it. But the point that I'm trying to make is this is when his legs were still a threat because he had 9 carries for 46 yards. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So really, he was over 300 yards of total offense because he was able to mix in his legs there. So I wonder, something you talked about with holding the ball, is it possible, is it likely that when he doesn't necessarily have to hold the ball because he can tuck it down and run when it isn't there, that he's maybe was forcing some throws at the end of last season because he felt like he didn't have any other choice?
Right.
Interesting thing to look out for sure.
Right. And that's what's tough too, because you look at some of those plays, look at the Samford game. Badger goes down at the 3-yard line and 7-yard line respectively. Then you have Mizell down at the 5 on the left side of the field. In the Kentucky game, you've got Mizell down the right side of the field. And then you have another play where DK is down. Again, great call out there as far as leading, as far as the pass goes, and getting him in the right position. If that ball is placed a little bit further to lead, guaranteed touchdown, right?
Yep.
Or I guess I want to say guaranteed, but more than likely a touchdown. So yeah, definitely he should have more touchdowns on the season as a result of that. So there's another opportunity as well. Good call out.
For sure. For sure. Absolutely. So speaking of things that he can do to not only improve, but also maximize this offense, we're now going to discuss what his potential is to maximize the current offense. So when we saw him start fully healthy against Kentucky, as I just mentioned, a decent defensive team from a talent standpoint, but not an overly complex scheme. I just talked about this. We saw him be able to really, really do well against that, right? So again, something I just said, so I didn't realize these points were written in here, but how does his ability to run this year add dimensions to the offense that he didn't have before? So let's think back. Let's go back to 2022 Napier AR, right? What did it look like, especially when we started putting in some RPO, which I'm hearing rumors we may start putting in some RPO. Think back to the Tennessee game with AR and how he absolutely lit them up, right? Because when you're a threat to run and throw, it becomes totally different ball game, right? When teams knew he couldn't run, they played him differently. I guarantee you that. Now that is the case, so now think about this. If you drop 8 and you're sending guys deep and you're trying to stop that, you're playing a cover 4 back there, and meaning all 4 corners or all 2 safeties and 2 corners are backing up and bank. It's not a prevent defense, but basically you're covering the entire spread of the field back there, right? What does that leave? It leaves holes underneath for either checkdowns or running the football.
Scramble. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And especially if teams go in man against him with like a cover 2 man where you got 2 safeties deep to help for the deep, but you're putting your guys in man. Oh, look out if they play that. You better not play a lot of cover 2 man, because he's either going to burn you where somebody gets beat or he's going to smoke you with his legs, right? So, and again, same kind of thing AR was capable of doing. The problem with AR was he just didn't have the same deep ball accuracy, right? We saw him try a ton of deep balls. He just didn't hit a ton of them. DJs are on target all the time, right? Again, something I'll talk to in a minute here. But overall, I think that's where his potential is to kind of maximize the offense with his own play. We'll talk about play calling in a second. What are your thoughts on that?
No, great call out. And I think at the end of the day, the thing, if I had to chalk up his potential to maximize this offense is I just go back to last year and what he had to deal with, right?
Yep.
Not with the lion's share of the snaps going to Graham. So from a rhythm and timing standpoint, that was what it was. Health restrictions, like I mentioned earlier, after the UGA game, he sat out for the Texas game. Poor Aiden Warner. I think, hopefully he doesn't have PTSD from that experience, right? But against Ole Miss, LSU, and FSU, his hamstring couldn't have been more than 70, 75%, 80%. So I look at what happened there. And when you look at his true abilities, and you called him out, B, his dual threat, I mean, he was not a dual threat QB. He just wasn't. He became one-dimensional. Right? Lack of scrambling, held onto the ball longer, and you said it earlier, the F word, forced throws. There's
Yep.
not a doubt in my mind that made him feel like, well, I can't go left, I can't go right, I can't do this, I can't do that. There's a window, I think I can hit it. Let me, and too late.
Yep.
Too late.
Yep.
So those things definitely a big factor. And so his ability to run changes the game, like you said. His ability to just keep defenses on their heels because they don't, to quote our good friend Forrest Gump, or I guess Mama Gump, he's like a box of chocolates. You really don't know what you're going to get. All he needs is a dynamic play sheet. He'll take care of the rest. I believe it.
A dynamic play sheet. Well, funny you should bring up a dynamic play sheet. Let's talk about what DJ can do to get the most out of our play calling at the University of Florida, or lack thereof, as we all know, the concerns that this pod has with that. So let's talk about it. I'll let you lead off. What can DJ do to get the most out of the play calling?
Pull Russ Callaway aside. No.
I love it. I love it.
Is that pretty bad? Could we go ahead and scratch that from the record, please? No. So a couple things here. Crucially, the crucial thing for him is going to be health. Yep. He's back at 100%. He's throwing the ball. The hamstring's fine. Shoulder's fine. So that's going to be it. The second thing is execution. I believe that with the deep ball presence, in addition to a couple other things that we've discussed, the execution is going to be on point. The self-inflicted errors. So I know it's just the spring game, but you know what I did not see in the spring game out of all other spring games and much less, last season? Unforced errors.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed.
Procedural penalties, things like that. DJ's cadence, his ability to lead the troops, his ability to elevate the play of those around him, that's what I think is going to be one of his single greatest gifts and ability to do, to help raise that level of play and therefore limit some of those unforced errors, limit some of those things to the point where execution is even more crisp.
Love it.
By the time you throw in the arm and you throw in the arms and legs, the scrambling ability, it brings back the dual threat. Did you mention earlier RPO, right? The rumors of RPO.
Yes, I did. The RPO potential. Yes, we're hearing rumors that we may see some, like, a fair amount more RPO than what we've seen in the past. Which the only game really under Napier where I would say we've seen a good amount of RPO was AR versus Tennessee, which is probably the best offensive showing this team has ever put up under Napier. So
bingo. So to that end, all I'm going to say is, with having that been said and looking at our limitations of the playbook, or the DC at Miami called it out, right? Here are the 10 plays.
Yep.
Here's the first 10, whatever. Yep. Maybe this year we get 15 to 20 plays. Hey,
let's settle down there now.
Okay. Sorry.
I'll take 13. I like the number 13. I'll take 13. Just kidding. Obviously, we have more than that, and we know that. But it's the frequency with which some of these things get called. And again, maybe this does help that. We'll see. That's a we'll see for sure. But continue.
Yeah, I really think that's it as far as what I have on that, and as far as what we can do to get out of it. I really don't see anything else. Unforeseeing the fact that a complete offensive programming and overhaul, which I don't think is fully needed.
Sure. So really good stuff there. I like the points, and I think they're all super valid. So I'm going to dig in deeper to one specific aspect of this offense. So we maybe haven't talked about this, but Napier's offense is kind of like Mike Shanahan light, right? It's not the same at all as a Shanahan offense. Right, or Kyle Shanahan light. Excuse me, I knew that Mike was wrong. That's his dad. But a Kyle Shanahan light, right? So
a Shanahan.
Yes, a Shanahan, right? So run the ball, zone scheme, which is what we run, right? It's a zone scheme running attack, and then vertical passing. That's the blueprint here of what's being put out. Vertical passing being deep balls, right? So there are, excuse me, elements of this offense that are actually extremely conducive to what DJ does best. So I think where he can get the most out of this play calling is the deep ball. Now, the question is, what will teams do against it to try to combat that and everything else? But again, you bring his legs back into play, and you can't just sell out against the deep ball and put everybody back there, because then he's going to smoke you underneath with a run or again with a check down. So you're kind of handcuffed when the deep ball is as accurate as it is. You kind of just have to pick your poison. So to that end, here are some more PFF stats, different from the ones you gave earlier or similar, whatever. But Lagway has a 99.4. It goes from 0 to 100 on the scale. 99.4 PFF deep pass rating. Best. We said second best. Wrong. It was best. I had it mixed up. His deep ball accuracy is graded as a 97.3 by Pro Football Focus, reflecting his arm strength, his precision, and his ability to read defenses. Well, at least on deep passes. He is ranked as the top deep ball passer going into the 2025 football season. His pass grade on deep throws, the deep throws himself, like the overall, is listed here as a 95.6, which says it ranks third in the country, but I think that's from 2024. And he had a 154.9 passer rating on those deep balls. The only reason it's not higher than that, because 154.9 is kind of, honestly, it's not average, but it's only a little above average with the college rating scale, is because of the amount of incompletions, right? Is because of the accuracy piece that factors in there. And again, I'll remind you, the scale is 0 to 100. So a 99.4 on deep pass rating overall and 97.3 on deep pass accuracy. It only goes to 100. Wow. That's really, really, really good. It's about as good as you could possibly get, to be honest. So when we look at that and we say, okay, he's a phenomenal deep ball passer, which we've talked about. We know, I understand that. But again, that's very conducive to what this offense actually does try to do. Regardless of how it tries to do it, regardless of our issues with that, the goal of this offense is run the ball and throw it deep. That's what they want to do. He plays to that very well. So I think there is a lot of potential, actually, for him to get the most out of the play calling of one Mr. Billy Napier. Interesting stuff. It's really intriguing to see how this is going to play out. So with that, let's move on and talk about our last bullet here and talk about his progression. We'll go from hatchling to bull gator, we're calling this, right? So from a recruit all the way through what he could potentially be at Florida. So I'll let you get this started. Talk about his journey here from Willis, Texas, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. So this is a very unique story, maybe kind of, again, similar along the lines of Tebow-esque, whatever the case might be. But DJ Lagway hails from Texas, Willis, Texas. Okay. And the interesting thing about Lagway was, even when he was a little boy, he himself was quoted saying that Florida was his dream school. And growing up, he always felt like it would be cool to play in the swamp. What a cool name, this, that, and the other. You know, similar temperature, whatever is playing in Texas. And obviously high school football in Texas and Florida. It is what it is.
It's hot, is what it is. It's friggin' hot.
Definitely hot. You know, and so the interesting thing about Lagway was, again, phenomenal stats. But I'll tell you what, when you look at the recruiting process, they found Lagway early. And I'm not sure if a lot of people know this, but Joe Hamilton was also instrumental in recruiting Lagway. Okay. But he later departed for another position. Billy was the one who saw film after the fact, saw what his quote unquote talents were, the arm talent, outside the leg talent. And Billy picked it up from there. They really pursued him. This was what was interesting. Lagway committed to the Gators on December 7th, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
For the 2024 class.
Mm-hmm.
December 7th. Okay, so it's like, okay, we have a lot of players that commit, they waffle, it's NIL, there's more money over here, there's more money. Where else was he being sought out from, right? Miami, Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, LSU. We know.
And late Texas and USC late, because they came in big time.
We know there was a very late, very massive push from Texas and USC. You got oil money, Lambo money, you got West Coast money, whatever you want to call it. Massive
Lambo
push.
money. I like Lambo money. Let's just go. That's Miami. Miami is Lambo money. So we got to leave that with the Hurricrooks down there.
I guess, yeah, but yeah, I don't understand the whole Lambo connection with Texas. I just thought that was oil, but anyways, I digress. I'll leave that alone. The fact of the matter is, this kid committed on December 7, 2022, and he did not waver at all.
Nope, he did not.
Very interesting to see that happen. He extended the offer in March of 22, continued to actively recruit him, and then when early commitment, all right, on signing day, December 7th, locked him in, officially signed his national letter of intent December of 23. And after that, even though everything else that was going on with the other schools pursuing him, he continued to stay engaged. He came for recruiting visits. He came for official visits, unofficial visits, although I'll be honest with you, I would come for the visits too, because they wine you, they dine you. You get, I mean, it's almost like having a key to the city. You get treated real well. Let's be honest. But that aside, that's when he started being a recruiter himself. That's when he started buying in, leaning in. And let's face it, folks, look at the status of the program where it was then. It wasn't as great as it was now. Ones would argue it still hasn't been great, because guess what?
We were coming off a 5-7 season.
Bingo.
But we didn't make a bowl game.
Didn't make a bowl game, right? And so morale's not good. This is not good. Program's in the crappers. Is Billy going to hang around? But he happens to nab this 5-star prodigy, right? The next quote unquote big thing in college football. He's coming to Florida. He's committed. He's all in. Phenomenal. And so it's really interesting to see that. And to the point you made, what USC and Texas did for that late push to try and sway him, and he just stayed committed. And hopefully that is what was going to speak volumes to all these other recruits. And as he is building and actively recruiting players to play in the swamp.
Yeah, and I think the natural question from here is, from what we've already seen, granted it's still a limited body of work, and that is important to keep perspective on, right? It is a limited body of work. It's half a season, basically. I know he played more than that in total, but really, as a starter, it's half a season, right? It was 6 regular season games he started. It was 1 bowl game. So it's half a season. So that's something to keep in mind. We don't have all the data yet. We don't have everything there yet. We also don't have the things about his development that we already talked about we hope to see. So the potential is there for him to become an all-time Gator great, for him to become a statue. Let's get real. He has statue potential. Okay, there are 3 statues outside the football field at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. If y'all don't know, they are Spurrier, Warfel, and Tebow. He has the potential to be the next one. Let's not kid ourselves. It's there. However, can he be his best? Can he execute the way that he needs to with our current offensive scheme? That is a question that we simply do not have answers to. Now, listen, we've talked about the hope of Callaway influencing decisions. We've just talked about tonight rumors we're hearing about RPO. That's good. These are things that are going in the right direction, but we will not know until we see the product on the field this year and beyond as to what that looks like. So, potential's there. I know the capability is there with him from what I've already seen. There's not a doubt in my mind, not a shred of doubt in my mind. But can we actually make it happen? Or can he actually make it happen, especially with some of the potential limitations that he could face? We will see. We will find out. But I am interested to see it because I think there is the possibility of a statue in his future. But again, time will tell. So the last question we have here in regards to this kind of transition is how can he impact future Gators? We talked about his recruiting, but what about his leadership? What about his ability to kind of take people under his wing and things of that nature? So the first piece of evidence I'll offer for this is when he started in his second game of the season, right, as a freshman, true freshman, when Mertz went down with a concussion against Miami and he came in to start against Samford, there was a piece of film that you may or may not have seen where he had the entire team rallied around him in a huddle before the game, and he was getting them fired up, but not just a rah-rah thing. You could tell it was impassioned. You could tell it was almost intimate, as the term you used earlier, right? He was getting very serious in that huddle and really talking to those guys before bringing them out on the field as an 18-year-old true freshman in his second game in the Swamp. That's pretty good evidence that he has leadership capability. Further beyond that, he was taught by quite an amazing leader in one Graham Cracker Mertz. Say what you want about Graham. We've always been pretty kind to him on this pod, and I think rightfully so. But ultimately, one of the things that there is no question about with that kid is his leadership. And he taught that to DJ, or taught what he knew of it to DJ. And his selflessness and his, again, leadership passed along there, not only to DJ, but to Florida as a school by proxy, right? We talked about the things he's doing for the program. You think he just thought to do all of those things? No, I guarantee you there is Graham's influence in that. And the question I have is, can he do the same for our next year in advance commit who's locked down his recruitment and is coming to Florida in Will Griffin? Interesting things to think about, interesting things to look at as time develops with DJ. I am very much looking forward to it and wanting to see how he continues to grow in that leadership role and how he continues to improve. What are your thoughts on that?
Great points. Great points. Yeah, I think he had the ultimate. I feel like he had the ultimate example in what Graham did, and this was evident in the spring game 2 seasons ago when we saw DJ Lagway, Derek Sr., make the post about Graham Mertz and the Mertz family and what they have done for his family and his son to interlock him into the fold, integrate him into the fold, and get him acclimated to this life and everything else. I have no idea what it's going to look like and how it's going to feel, but great call out on what he did before that Samford game, because we did talk about that. I mean, the sight of that, to see the look in his eyes and to see what that meant for that team, for that team to rally around him for his first big time start, regardless if it was a team like Samford, huge, absolutely huge. He absolutely is going to be that for Will Griffin, Tramel Jones. Hell, who knows what his conversations were like with Aiden Warner in the offseason, right? Depending on what happens with Harrison Bailey, because I'm not going to speak for you, but I think we can say, spring game aside, Aiden Warner came out looking not like the Aiden Warner we saw coming off the field last fall.
I would tend to agree with that from a way he carried himself and a just kind of, I don't want to call it swag, but just his cadence of his walk, his stature, his physical presence on the field was different than what we saw, not just against Texas, but against Georgia, and against even in games where he came in at the end. I think Kentucky came in at the end, right? Like there were a few games where he got some cleanup duty right at the end of the game there. And the Samford, I believe, as well, right? So the point being, though, he looked like the moment was very big for him when he came into those games. I will agree with you that I didn't see necessarily that same presence or lack thereof in the spring game. That's a good call out.
Mm-hmm. And so the other thing is, I can't see DJ knowing what this program means to him, knowing how much he's hung in there with Billy, because let's be honest, the seat's been hot, especially after the first 2 seasons. Coming into that 3rd season, especially the way the 3rd season started, we've talked about it.
Yeah, go back and listen to the last episode if you'd like to hear our thoughts on how hot the seat was.
Number 56. There you go. No, but I mean, all those things combined with the culture building, with the process, trust the process, with the staff that he has in place, with everything that they've been able to build out. I think, again, we wish him luck. AA leaving, Big Papa Ron, hopefully he's going to earn that moniker this fall. Is going to have that defense.
We're going to give it back to him for now. We're going to give it back to him for now.
Right? Sincere coming in, the defense is going to be humming. The only thing we have in question right now, if all those other things prove to be true, I'm not calling it the if and only if statement like in math, but is the offensive side of the football. And if this can do what we need it to do, and he becomes the ultimate leader, I tell you what, the impact that this could, the ripple effect that this could have on recruiting, the ripple effect that this could have on this program, because arguably, look at the ripple effect that happened. I know people have their qualms with Chris Leak. I tell you what, Chris Leak was a silent leader, still a leader nonetheless.
Yep.
Tebow coming in, taking the helm. We know that Tebow and Leak, right?
Tebow was quiet too, I mean, he wasn't really vocal or anything.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And here's the thing. After 2010, we had a lot of great quarterbacks here, right? We had John Brantley. We had a lot of great talent coming in, but were they properly developed? Did they have the proper opportunities? Did they have the proper playmakers around them? Again, a lot of question marks. If this plays out the way that we hope and think it will play out with the orange and blue goggles on, what a ripple effect this could create for Florida football moving forward over the next 4, 5, 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think the potential again is there. And it's going to be really interesting to see what comes of it. So I have a question for you as part of our closing thoughts here.
Yeah.
Who is the last quarterback, or I could even argue player. I could maybe even say player, but we'll say quarterback, that had you this excited to watch him play before a season started? I understand that we forget expectations of the team for this. Just who were you this excited to watch play last at the University of Florida? I know my answer. I'm curious what yours is.
The obvious answer, I think, would be someone. It is going to be number 15. Is going to be Tebow.
The OG 15. Yes, indeed. I would agree with that.
But I'd say the last time, the absolute last time I was this excited to see a player on the field was going to be AR, because when I looked at AR, and I'll say it this way, I saw, so AR played basketball right here, Eastside High School, right down the road, and it was so funny. I saw him, during halftime when he was not enrolled at Eastside anymore, when he was enrolled at UF. There was a basketball game. It was halftime. He came out down on the court talking to some people, this, that, and the other. He palmed a basketball. Just picked it up, palmed it from the ground, stood underneath the basket, jumped effortlessly, and dunked the ball. Yep. And I mean, when you look at AR, he's a specimen of a man. And going, what? He's going to be our quarterback? Yeah. I'm excited to see that on the field.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And with some of the plays he'd made as a backup, that's a fair point. Mine is going to be Tebow, though, because I think I'm actually more excited for DJ than I was for AR. It's close, though. It's a good call out, and one that I probably overlooked in my initial kind of thought on this question. But I think it's still higher for Lagway. So it has to, for me, go back to Timmy. And when you go back to Timmy, if you can put yourself back in that mindset, if you were a Gator fan then, and I assume you are now if you're listening to this podcast, but if you were a Gator fan then, the excitement was palpable. I mean, I went to Tebow's last game in the Swamp. I've never seen so many flash bulbs pop in my life. People wanted to document the moment. They knew it was historic. Now, granted, that's the last game, not the first game. But the point that I'm trying to make is when we know that we have this kid coming in as our starter, obviously the health has to be there for this to work. And that is a concern. It is a question mark. I don't think it's too looming large of a question mark yet, but it is a question mark. But seeing what he has already accomplished in just half a season as a starter, once again, I know it was more than that, but it was half a season as a starter. It's incredible to think about what his potential is, especially when you say, okay, that was him as a freshman. AR wasn't doing that stuff as a freshman, man.
No, sir.
Unbelievable stuff. And I am beyond excited to see what he's capable of this year. So time will tell and we will find out, but man, it's provocative. Gets Gator Nation going, as you like to say, for sure. There's no question about it. No question about it. So with that, we will wrap things up here. First question, any other closing thoughts from you before I give our next pod details here?
I'll tell you what. I'm gonna sneak a little fun fact in here for you.
All right, let's do it.
Allegedly, and this I have to look up on the fly, right? So Tim Tebow, 6'3", 245.
Oh yeah. So I already know where you're going. I already know where you're going.
DJ Lagway, 6'3", 237.
Yep, and that's only after he cut weight. I believe he was 243 last year.
He was heavier. He was. Mm-hmm. So outside of that, the excitement is palpable, true, and outside of that, it was really fun to dive into this pod, man. Good topic. Enjoyed going through it with you.
Yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement. Really, really looking forward to see how it materializes come late August and beyond. So with that, our next pod will be, again, in 2 weeks. We're keeping this 2 week cadence in the off season here. And it will be, so that is 7-8 that we will be next coming to you. And we will be talking about some updates, and those updates being on NIL, because we finally have the House versus NCAA settlement passing, and also a recruiting update, as previously mentioned at the beginning of the pod here. So we will kind of combine those two into one. We figure they kind of go hand in hand, and we still don't have everything we necessarily wanted to discuss the full implications of the House settlement ruling, but I think we have enough that we can at least bring you all up to speed and kind of discuss some of the details of it and where we think it's going to go from there. And then again, how it's impacting recruiting and also what recruiting looks like so far for the 26 class for the University of Florida. And who knows, we might have 7 more recruits by then, the way Billy's cooking. So moving along from that, I will turn it back over to you and you can sign us off here, sir.
Awesome. Gator Nation, we appreciate you. Thanks y'all for listening. We had a great time presenting this topic to you, as we affectionately called it the DJ Lagway Pod. So wherever you are, whenever you may be listening, thank you for taking the time, and we will see you around, Gator Nation.